welcome back. This is the third part of an Airtable mini-series. In this session, we'll be looking at Airtable automations. It's the automations you can implement that are what really start enabling your Airtable solution to come to life. Be it with scheduled or data-driven automations, or even utilizing connections to other applications like Slack or a CRM platform. If you haven't already, please check out the introduction and interface sessions, which I've linked above and in the description below. Well, today we'll be implementing automations on the project management solution we've built on the previous sessions. So let's jump straight in now and start building. So now we're logged back into Airtable. We're on the previous project, looking at our basis. So we've got our tasks, projects, and person entities here. Now we're looking at adding automations. And when doing so, we really need to think about what sort of information or what triggers we're going to need in order to bring value to our application. In this instance, we're looking at automations. We're going to be looking at creating 3 separate automations. The first one, we're going to focus very much on tasks. Now, if a task is late, there is no way of knowing other than using our interfaces that we developed on the previous session. However, what we can do is we can look at leveraging automations so that should a task go beyond its end date, we can alert not only the assigned resource because we have their email address, we can also look to alert the email address from the owner of that project as well, which is what this field here is storing. So firstly, we're going to be looking around late tasks. The next one, we're going to look at projects. Now, if we had someone entering projects into the system, that will likely not necessarily be the person that would be the owner of that project. So we might want to look at what we do in the case of creating a new project. Or we might want to have a look at what happens if we've got a project where not all the tasks are allocated. So we want to be able to prompt that owner in order to investigate that project. So our second automation will be around projects that don't have fully allocated tasks, and we'll be alerting the owner to that. Lastly, we're going to be looking at creating an alert based on a new task being created. So when a new task is created, we'll then look at alerting the assigned resource that they have a task that they should be aware of. Again, we've built a whole load of interfaces around giving visibility here, but what we want to be able to do is at the point of creation, give and drive the user to that particular task. So let's start having a look at building our first automation, which is around late tasks. So to set up our automations, we need to use the automation menu. Here we'll then be brought to a blank automation. We can then rename this and we can call this late tasks alerts. Here we then need to create a trigger or set a trigger. Now in this case, this is going to be a schedule. We're going to set this for a particular time, so we can actually set it on an interval if we want. So here we're going to say days, so every day, and then we need to set the time of the day. So we can start looking at that. So we can say every one day, once a day, and we can set this off at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then we've got that standard trigger set up there. So if we wanted to, we could set it up so that we would have multiple days that it could trigger, etc. But we're going to do it at 1 a.m. every morning. It will check and it will trigger. So 1 o'clock every morning, it then wants to do an action. So we're talking about triggers and actions. So we've got our trigger. Our action here then is we want to be able to find records. So we select that. We can then give this a description of what this is going to do. So this is going to get all late tasks. We then select the table that we want to interrogate. That will be task. And we can then select how we're filtering. So we can use a view. So we can look at potentially configuring a view within our bases there, our tables, and we can actually build it based on that. Here though, we're just going to do it based on a condition. So the condition here, and we can hit add, is going to be where the end date is before. Today. So where the end date's before today, and the status, because we need to check the status, because we could have a late task that was a week late and then we've actually delivered it. So is not complete. So that will then get us our late tasks, and we can then test this if we want. And there we go, we've got a task here that's dated 20th of February. Today's date is the 6th of March, so we know that this is late. So it would pick up that record. So each stage is going to run through, and then within here, we can then start looking to do some further logic. So here we're going to do a repeating group, and we're going to repeat for what? And what we want to repeat for, we want to set the input to our get all late tasks, and we want to use the list. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, we're going to get all records. That could be one or multiple. In this case, it's just the one. And then we want to do an action on each one of these late tasks. So that action we want to describe here. So what we're going to describe is we're going to describe send email to owner and the assigned resource. So I'm going to say project owner just to be really clear on here. And then we can look at adding an action. So here we can hit send email. And here we can then configure the actual email. So here we can select who we want to send to. So if we're looking at this, we want to look at all of the fields we've got against the task. Again, now we're looking at the current item that belongs to the list of records, which is a list of all late tasks. So here what we're going to do is we want to find the name or the email address, for the owner. So we've got owner from project, owner name, email address from owner from project. So we want that first of all, and we just want the value. We then want to put a comma here, and we want to look at adding also the assigned resource email address as well. So email address from assigned resource, value, we want to put that in there. So we've got both of the email addresses in there. We then now need to look at building up the subject. So the subject could be late task, and then we want to give some more detail around that. So probably want the name of the task for project, and then we can hopefully pick up the name of the project. Name from project, and that value. And that should be it, I think. Yep, so we're going to have late task and the name of the task for project X, Y, and Z. And then we want to put something in the body of the email. So here could be, please be aware that the above task is late. Right, then what we might want to do is actually put some more details in here. So we can go details below. Now, we've got a lot of the information already in the subject. So here what we can look to add in are things like the start date and end date maybe. They might be useful elements. So we can click on here and we can go start date, end date, Current status might be useful. Let's look at adding that in. And maybe we also want the notes as well, because there might be some notes on there that give us a bit more insight into that. And then we can say, please review end dates. Yeah, let's do that. Please review, end dates. Actually, let's say end date and status. It may be that it's complete and I haven't marked it for the task here. And here what we're able to do really nicely is add in a link. So we've got the base record URL, and that URL embedded within the email will allow you to click and get taken directly to that particular task. So they can fully action this then at that point. So let's just generate a preview, run tests. So here we go. So we know when we go find records, when we did the test, so we'll go back and quickly do this test again just to clarify here. We've got the Tesco project, which is develop interfaces, and that's due by the 20th. We then went on here and we run our test. So we got the input through here. And then here we've got this output. There we go. Got this output here. So it's going to email test@outlook.com. Obviously, that's a facetious email. We've got the details there of the subject, and then we've got the details here of the actual message and the link here. So everything there has worked as expected. We can possibly look at doing some formatting on the dates potentially, depending on where you are and how you look at your dates. But I mean, the data there is all correct. And that's basically working. So once we've got that done, we can literally select this to turn this on. And this will basically turn on our automation. So it will now run from 1 o'clock in the morning. And it will run every day at 1 o'clock in the morning GMT and trigger those emails. Now, we can see here that we've got an error. This is just around the fact that I'm running on a free account at the moment, just with regards to just testing this particular plan or this implementation. And this email address isn't associated with any users, so that's just why. But we can see this implementation would work. We just would have to hit the upgrade and go through that process, or change the email address and make it a valid email address. So there we go. We've built and tested our first automation in Airtable within sort of 10 or 15 minutes. So that's really straightforward. Now let's look at creating the second automation. So our automation list is on the left-hand side, and we've got an option here to create different automations. Something I need to make you aware of is you can actually create a section. So a little bit like our interfaces, it's a way of segregating your automation list into different sections. It's as easy as that, basically. So if we look at going for, let's say we could create one around alerts, we can then expand this and we can drag and drop our late tasks alert into that particular section. And from here, we can rename and delete, etc. as well. So we're going to create our second automation, and this one is around our tasks not allocated. So this will be projects with allocated tasks. And actually, to kind of align it, we're going to call it an alert anyway, even though it's in the alert section. It just makes it very clear. So from here, we need to add our trigger. So again, the same as the last one, we're going to create a scheduled a scheduler in order to trigger this. So we're going to say it's on particular days. It's going to be fine. Oh, there we go. Everyone. Oh, I've done that completely wrong. There we go. Every 1 day at 1 AM. Next, we then want to do our find records. So here we're going to give this a description, and this is going to be get all projects with tasks that are not allocated. Right, and this again is going to be based on the project table. So again, we're getting all projects with unallocated tasks. We can then choose a condition in the same way we did last time, and we're going to go where tasks not allocated is greater than 0. Let's test that. And there we go. So we've got our Tesco one here, where we've got a task that needs to be completed by the 7th of March, which in this case is tomorrow. So it's not late, but it's unallocated. So this particular task, or we've got a task for this particular project that isn't or hasn't been allocated. So from here then, we can then choose our repeating group. For our repeating group, we're going to choose our projects with unallocated tasks. We're going to use it as a list, and we're going to repeat for each in that list. There are some instances where you can do some custom bits, but we're not worried about that. We just want to do this. And here what we're going to do is we're going to email the project owner where tasks are not allocated. And again, this represents pretty much what we did with the previous one. And from here, then we can look at testing this with the input just to see what we'd get as a list. And that would then return our single task. From here, we can look at having the action, or I've skipped that while I was doing it. There we go, we've got one record, and it's given us the detail for that. And we can start looking at all of the fields that belong to that particular project. So from here, then we can look at doing Slack messaging, team messages. Again, for the sake of this, we're going to be looking at generating an email. So from here, we can then have our to. So again, this is going to be going to the email address from the owner. That will just be the value. And then we need to do our subject. So on our subject, then we're going to have unallocated tasks for project, and again we can then just nicely add in the name of the project, and then we can start building this up. Please check the above project for tasks that are not allocated. Project link, and then we can add the project link in here. So base record, there we go. And then we can also do tasks for project. And we can look at going down here, and I'll probably skip past it here. There we go, tasks. So we've got this link to tasks. So again, the way the data works within Airtable, you've got a link back. And what we can do is we can use that as a list, basically. So we can put the list of, let's say, names. So there we go. We've got a list of the names there that we're able to do there. And we can even modify and change that. It may well be in this case that we want to put in a direct link to the URL as well. But if we wanted to do that, that would take possibly some different licensing within Airtable to do that. But there you go. That gives us that way of viewing it. So from here now, we should be able to test this. So if we do a test, we just want to generate it. We don't want to run it and actually send the email. And here again, we've got the warning for the same reason. We've just got this facetious email that we've created. So there we go. So we've got a link here saying that for the project, we know it's for the Matforce project. And here is a list of the tasks. So there we go. We've created 2 email alerts here. And if we wanted to get these up and running, we just need to turn them on. And there we go. They would be active and running. And this particular one is an alert. So we're going to drop it into our alerts section. So we've got our 2 alerts now, one created around the projects where they're unallocated tasks, and one where there's late tasks. And again, with this one, we had 2 recipients. With the projects, we just had the 1. Now, our final automation, we want to look to create an email for any new task that is created. So these have all been around a scheduler. What I want to look at now is how you can do that based on our data that's within our tables within Airtable. So let's look at doing that now. So like our previous automations, we've got a section called alerts. What I think would be good is if we create, I'll do this later, create a different section here. So we're going to call these triggers because that's kind of the, I suppose, the database term for the trigger point that we're going to be using for the automation. So then if we go create automation, yep, that's fine. And then we can give this one a name. So this is going to be new tasks. New task alert. Okay, so we're going to create a trigger. So this trigger, you can do it based on form submissions. So you've got some really nice trigger points here. And although we focus predominantly on this scheduler, we've got different things around webhooks. We've got when an email's received, when a button's clicked. So we've got a lot of automation that is based around interfaces. On top of that, there are other integrations for different apps and things here as well, which is brilliant. And Airtable's really good for this. What is good with Airtable is because it's a very well-known and solid application or SaaS-based application, there are other automations that can actually talk and feed into Airtable itself. So this is all around from within Airtable. You may have a CRM system where you can actually leverage the ability to be able to feed data into Airtable. And what's really good about that is we're looking at creating an alert based on a new task coming in. And because we're looking at the base level, not that we couldn't look at doing it on form submission, but because we're doing it on the base level, the trigger will happen regardless of whether the data is entered via an interface or whether it's come in via some sort of integration. So what we want to do is on when a record is created. And the table we're focused on here is the task table. Now, from here, what we want to do is on creation of that, we're going to then look at sending an email. And we can look at sending an email and then configuring the data around the record that has been created. So here, this is going to be new task alert. And then we can look at who we're going to be sending it to. So in this case, we're going to be sending it to the email address from the assigned resource. And that's just going to be on value. Now, this is an alert, so we sort of looked at creating alerts here, but the trigger point really isn't the fact that it's an alert, scheduled alert. So actually, if we're going to rename this, we can call this scheduled alerts. This is more around the actual triggers within Airtable on the basis side. So I'm just going to drag that up. No, there we go. There, perfect. So we can look at setting this up. So it's going here. We're then going to go new task has been assigned to you. Has been assigned. Yeah, let's do that. And then on here, let's get the name of the task. Actually, let's do that at the start. I prefer that. New task has been assigned for project. There we go. Look at that project. And then we should be able to link to the project name. Because again, when we created the interfaces, we said we wanted to force them to assign a project. So we already know at that level we've got that there as a mandatory piece. So please be aware you have been allocated a new task. Details below. Obviously we can set this up as a different however we want, basically. So we've got a start date, we've got an end date. Let's put duration, because the person receiving this might want to know quite quickly how much effort potentially it's going to be, or the period of time. And then we might want to put the notes on there as well. Let's see what else we've got here. So we've got the start date, end date, we'll have our duration, and then we're also going to have the notes. And then we can put the task link. This email's about tasks, so we don't even need to use the word task in that case. Oh, I've just clicked off there, pop that here, and then base record URL. Right, let's. That's okay. Yeah. So I'm going to choose a record. So we're just going to say or test that one of these. So planning interfaces has been chosen there. We're going to run this and just do a generation on here. Again, we know we're going to get this error around the email. But there we go. So planning interfaces, new task has been assigned for project Matforce, project Tesco. There we go. So please be aware you've been allocated a new task, details below. So we've got the start date, the end date, the duration. There's no notes there. And then we've also got the link. So I think that works fairly well. We might want to put days here. So then if we go generate preview again, will that let us do that? No. Let's go back on here. I need to choose the record again. Back on here. And there we go, days. We've just got to have a space. Forget it does that on here. You've actually got to put the space in. Choose a record. There we go. Go back on here. And then generate preview. We know we're going to have that error. There we go, 6 days. So we can pretty things up and make it look a little bit nicer, but in essence, that's our automation complete. And again, like the other ones, we can turn this on and off if we so wish. So we can turn this on so that the moment we end up creating that new record, this will actually trigger. So that is our 3 automations. You can see here they're really easy to create, and we can just go in here and you've got, if you hit see all, you've got a lot of options here on here. You can create based on when a new calendar event's created, in which case you'll be pointed to your Google or your Outlook calendar, so you can trigger things off of that. So it may well be that every time you get a new meeting request, you want to create a new task for whatever reason. You know, you've got a whole lot of control there, and it's really, really easy to delete, turn off, turn on. You've got automation history here, so you can see when things have changed, when they've been released, and things like that as well. So automation within Airtable is just really powerful and really fun to use. And the great thing is, because it's no code, it is simple. Thank you for joining me during this session. Hopefully it's been useful to see how to build automations within Airtable and how they can really deliver value to your application. I'll be looking to generate more content around Airtable and other applications and integration platforms as well. So if you have any suggestions, or if you own your own integration platform and you want me to review it and create some content around it, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.